heard every week on the amateur radio bands all around the world, broadcast on low-power AM and FM stations all across the United States, and one of the first podcasts on the Internet. We are This Week in Amateur Radio, the worldwide premier amateur radio and technology news magazine and bulletin service of the air. Here are the stories for release around the Earth as we come to air with edition number 1399 of This Week in Amateur Radio. The FCC announces that obsolete Part 97 rules will be deleted on February 10, 2026. The new technician class question pool is released and takes effect on July 1, 2026. The FCC allocates 60 meters worldwide amateur radio band and makes minor modifications to 70 centimeters. We'll tell you all about it. The ARRL announces that $25,000 is at stake in the upcoming ARRL student coding competition. The deadline is approaching for the ARRL Foundation scholarship applications. The league wishes entertainer and comedian Dick Van Dyke a happy 100th birthday. We'll tell you why. World Heritage Grimeton Station SAQ will be on the air on Christmas Eve. American Public Media settles with the FCC over illegal broadcast of emergency alert tones. Scientists discover that high levels of CO2 in the atmosphere can affect radio propagation. Former Vermont Races amateurs are welcomed by the Medical Resource Corps. And there is still time to participate in the 12 Days of Christmas special event station. All of this and a lot more is straight ahead in today's edition of This Week in Amateur Radio. These headline stories will come to you in a moment along with this week's special features. We'll visit with Bruce Page, KK5DO, and get an update from AMSAT and what's new with all of those amateur satellites in orbit. Australia's own Onno Ben Shop, VK6FLAB, and Foundations of Amateur Radio will present part one of a new series on building a shack. This week's episode is entitled Setting the Scene. Our own amateur radio historian, Will Rogers, K5WLR, begins a brand new series that will be on the air here on This Week in Amateur Radio a couple times a month, entitled Dead Electrical Dudes, and Will's first stiff is James Clerk Maxwell, the father of all that we hams hold sacred. And we will stop by and visit with Bill Sawyers, AJ8B, in the DX Corner with all the latest news on DXpeditions, DX, upcoming contests, and a lot more. That's all straight ahead as North America's premier amateur radio and technology news magazine and bulletin service, This Week in Amateur Radio, takes to the air right now. Reporting from our headquarters studio here just outside of chilly Albany, New York, I'm George, W2XBS.
And reporting from our news bureau in Sandwich, Illinois, where just a few short days from Christmas, I'm trying to figure out where that elf on the shelf is hiding. I'm Jordon Kurtz, Kilo Echo 9, Bravo, Papa Oscar.
And reporting this week from Cortlandville, New York, where I'm wondering if Santa's going to bring me a gift this year or a lump of coal. I guess we'll have to wait and find out. I'm Chris Perrine, KB2FAF.
And reporting from a news bureau in Salem, Ohio, this is Denny Haight, NZ8D.
And reporting from our news bureau in Rochester, New York, along the southern shore of Lake Ontario, I'm Dave Wilson, WA2HOY.
And reporting from our news bureau in frosty Orland Park, Illinois, where 10-degree temperatures won't stop me and 60,000 of my closest friends from cheering on the Chicago Bears this Sunday, I'm Mike Nikolich, N9OVQ.
Coming to you from a rather nippy but still sunny Space Coast in Florida, I'm Ed Johnson, W2PH.
And reporting from our true New York News Bureau, where the stockings are hung with care and a couple of thumbtacks, I'm Eric, Kilo Delta 2, Romeo, Juliet X-Ray.
And reporting from the Catskill Mountains in upstate New York, where 70-knot winds, whiteouts, torrential rain, and then followed by snow squalls is added to the nightmare of black ice on the highways. The weather outside is truly frightful, like the holiday song. I'm Don Hulick, K2ATJ.
And reporting from our news bureau in Fayetteville, Arkansas, where autumn seems to be winning the weather battle this week, I'm Will Rogers, K5WLR.
Today's edition of This Week in Amateur Radio is 100% human.
Leading off our news this week, The Federal Communication Commission in October 2025 adopted a report and order to delete almost 400 obsolete rules pertaining to its wireless services. As previously reported by ARRL, among the deletions were 4 in Part 97 that govern the amateur radio service. ARRL reports that the notice of the report and order has now been published in the Federal Register. Unless an objection is raised by January 2nd that the Commission finds to deserve its consideration, the following 4 Part 97 provisions will be deleted as of February 10th, 2026. 1. Part 97.27. This provision is duplicative of a statutory provision related to the FCC's right to modify stations' licenses. 2. Part 97.29. This provision specified an obsolete procedure to replace paper licenses. ARRL proposed deleting this section in comments filed earlier this year. 3. Part 97.315, Subpart B, Paragraph 2. This obsolete provision grandfathered HF amplifiers purchased before April 28, 1978 by an amateur radio operator for use at that operator's station, and grandfathered those manufactured before April 28, 1978, for which a marketing waiver was issued. 4. And finally, Part 97.521, Subpart B, and Appendix 2. This rule and appendix relate to obsolete VEC regions.
On December 18, 2025, the National Conference of Volunteer Examiner Coordinators, or NCVEC, Question Pool Committee released the revised 2026 through 2030 Technician Class Element 2 Question Pool. It will be required for all exam sessions beginning July 1, 2026. The new pool includes 409 questions, 27 new, 30 removed, and about 155 modified, compared to 412 in the prior pool. The pool also includes 3 diagrams used for some of the questions. The updated question pool incorporates significant changes compared to the prior pool. The questions were checked for technical accuracy and relevance to current amateur radio practices, as well as for grammar, syntax, format, clarity, and for redundancy within and between the pools. VECs and volunteer examiners must use test designs based on the new pool starting on July 1, 2026. Current ARRL VEC Technician Class Exam booklets, the 2022 series, and computer-generated Technician Class exams created from the 2022 question pool are valid until June 30th. After that, old versions should be destroyed. ARRL will have new editions of Technician Class study materials, including the ARRL Ham Radio License Manual, Gordon West Technician Class License Prep Book, and ARRL's Tech Q&A by May 2026. You can view all question pools on the National Conference of Volunteer Examiner Coordinator website. Pre-registration is now open for the ARRL Student Coding Competition, a new national challenge designed to engage young radio amateurs in shaping the future of amateur radio through software development. John Ross, KD8IDJ, has more in this special report.
Open to ARRL member amateur radio operators aged 21 and younger, the competition will invite students to design a mobile app that supports ARRL and the amateur radio community. Cash awards totaling up to $25,000 will be presented to one or more winning entries. The competition officially begins on January 1st, 2026, when complete rules and application specifications will be released at coding.arrl.org. But participants are reminded not to start coding yet. Entries must follow the published requirements. Project submissions will be due by March 31st, 2026. ARRL adult members are also encouraged to help spread the word and support the next generation of amateur radio innovators. The ARRL student membership is free for full-time students aged 21 and younger, removing a key barrier to participation. I'm John Ross, KD8IDJ.
Entries will be judged on how well they meet the specifications, user interface design and usability, code quality and stability, and the inclusion of extra features. Young hams, educators, and mentors are encouraged to pre-register now at coding.arrl.org to receive updates as additional details become available and to prepare for this exciting opportunity to contribute lasting tools to amateur radio.
The Federal Communications Commission on December 9, 2025, released a long-awaited report and order adopting a new amateur radio spectrum allocation in the 60-meter band that was approved for worldwide use on a secondary basis at the World Radio Communications Conference in the 2015 Final Acts. With all the details you need to know about the new band, we go to ARRL headquarters where John Ross, KD8 IDJ, files this special report.
The Commission also agreed with the ARRL petition to continue to allow amateur operations on 4 existing 60-meter channels outside the international allocation with a full 100 watts. The new rules will go into effect 30 days after publication in the Federal Register, when amateurs may then begin using the allocation. Specifically, the Commission allocated 5351.5 through 5366.5 kilohertz 60 meters to the amateur service on a secondary basis with a permitted power of 9.15 watts ERP. The Commission also authorized amateurs to continue using 4 existing channels outside of the 5351.5 to 5366.5 kilohertz band, centered on 5332, 5348, 5373, and 5404 kilohertz on a secondary basis with a permitted power of 100 watts ERP. There are no antenna restrictions, but antenna gain must be used to calculate the ERP. The 60-meter allocation is available to amateurs holding a general class or above license. The maximum permissional signal bandwidth is 2.8 kilohertz. Amateurs are cautioned, though, that this allocation is strictly on a secondary basis, and amateurs must avoid interfering with non-amateur stations using this spectrum. This obligation includes the responsibility to monitor for such stations using appropriate receiver bandwidths. The FCC emphasized that allowing amateur operations in this band while fully protecting incumbent primary federal operations is our priority, and even intermittent interference in this band could jeopardize important federal operations. I'm John Ross, KD8IDJ.
The Commission left open ARRL's 2017 petition for rulemaking to implement this World Radio Communication Conference allocation in docket RM-11785, stating that we expect the Commission may address any necessary power adjustments for the new 15 kilohertz international allocation in that proceeding. ARRL will be observing operations in the new band to evaluate the effect of the 9.15 watt limit and already has been monitoring the regulations and experiences of amateurs in other countries. Finally, in the same report and order, the FCC updated 420 through 450 MHz coordination and contact information for geographic areas where the peak envelope power amateur stations operating is generally limited to 50 watts. There was no substantive change to the areas covered by the power limitations.
The 2026 ARRL Foundation Scholarship Program is currently accepting applications, but the deadline is coming up quickly. All applications must be submitted by December 30th at 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. More than 170 scholarships ranging from $500 to $25,000 are available to active FCC licensed radio amateurs pursuing a higher education. Students are encouraged to apply early to ensure their materials are received on time. These scholarships, made possible through the generosity of ARRL Foundation donors, support and inspire young amateurs to explore amateur radio and advance their education, as well as pursue careers in wireless communications and related fields. In 2025, the ARRL Foundation awarded 170 scholarships, totaling $800,000, and we look forward to supporting the next group of talented applicants. For full details and online application, visit www.arrl.org/scholarship-program.
The World Heritage Grimeton radio station in Sweden is no stranger to celebrations, certainly not this year, as it marks its 100th year as a treasured communicator. Before its Jubilee year activities concluded on the 31st of December, the radio station will once again engage in one of its most popular traditions, its Christmas Eve message, a long-wave transmission in CW. 100 Christmas Eves will have come and gone when the call sign Sierra Alpha Quebec transmits the Christmas Eve message from the Grimeton radio station in Sweden on the morning of December 24th. The operator will once again be using the much-loved transmitter, which utilized an alternating current generator developed by the pioneering Swedish engineer Ernst Alexandersson. The Christmas Eve morning transmissions will be sent on 17.2 kilohertz, about a half hour after the transmitter has been started up. The output power is 200 kilowatts. It is a festive occasion on the radio station site itself, but for those who cannot be there personally, the message can be heard on the air, of course, and seen on the YouTube channel of the Alexander SAQ Grimeton Friendship Association. It's a Christmas gift to the world, as the association notes on its channel, pointing out that this is the only remaining electromechanical radio transmitter. Indeed, its continued operation is a holiday gift worth celebrating.
Happy belated birthday to entertainer and comedian Dick Van Dyke, who celebrated his 100th birthday on December 13. Van Dyke served as a narrator for the ARRL film The World of Amateur Radio. The film, shot in the mid-'70s, presents a then contemporary introduction to amateur radio, aimed at newcomers and the general public. Commissioned by ARRL and produced by Dave Bell Productions, the film updated earlier ARRL outreach material with the modern production values and contemporary subject matter. Also on the film, in all now silent keys, were Roy Neal, K6DUE, then a correspondent for NBC News, then U.S. Senator Barry Goldwater, K7UGA, a former Navy radio operator and TV and radio host Arthur Godfrey, K4LIB, and Hollywood producer Dave Bell, W6AQ. As an outreach and educational resource, the film served ARRL's efforts to introduce a new generation to amateur radio at a time of rapid technological change.
American Public Media settles with FCC over false emergency alert service tones. A program that aired on more than 500 U.S. non-commercial radio stations in 2023 contained emergency alert system tones in the absence of a real emergency, according to the FCC. American Public Media Group, the distributor of the program, agreed to a consent decree with the Commission's Enforcement Bureau on December 10th. APMG, the parent of American Public Media, a creator and distributor of programming to public radio stations across the U.S., will be making a voluntary contribution of $86,400 to the U.S. Treasury Department as a result of the transmission of EAS tones during a BBC Witness History program on tornado chasing. The Commission's rules forbid the use of EAS tones on the air outside actual emergencies or coordinated tests. Unauthorized use of the EAS tones thus presents a substantial threat to public safety, the FCC said in its notice on the consent decree. Minnesota Public Radio and Southern California Public Radio are subsidiaries to APMG, which includes 46 full-power non-commercial stations in Minnesota, South Dakota, Iowa, Idaho, Michigan, and California. All NPR and SCPR stations aired the BBC episode in question, as did approximately 500 other non-commercial stations who have distribution agreements with APM, according to the Commission. The decree is in the connection with the airing of the BBC Witness History program, Chasing the World's Biggest Tornado, heard on May 24, 2023. The episode centered on the EF3 tornado that struck El Reno, Oklahoma in 2013, the widest tornado ever recorded. You can hear the first EAS tone at the 22-second mark in the episode from the BBC's audio page. The FCC's Operations Center received multiple emails regarding the tones. Bureau staff confirmed that in the two instances, EAS tones and subsequent NOAA weather radio tornado warning alert audio were aired, a violation of its rules. The rules govern any of the four-part message used to activate an emergency alert. That includes the preamble and EAS header codes, the audio attention signal, the actual message, and end-of-message codes. The Commission has repeatedly warned that the use of simulated or actual EAS tones for non-authorized purposes, such as commercial or entertainment purposes, can lead to dangerous alert fatigue, the Enforcement Bureau wrote in its notice regarding the decree. Because those tones include data elements, the Commission continued, simulated or actual tones might result in false activations, spreading misinformation. The Bureau sent a letter of inquiry to APMG in November 2023. APMG responded timely, the Enforcement Bureau noted, that December. Second and third requests were sent in January and June 2024, which the Commission said were also responded to in a timely fashion. The Enforcement Bureau agreed to resolve its investigation with the creation of the consent decree. APMG admitted by virtue of the agreement that the FCC had a fair and accurate portrayal of the facts regarding the EAS tones that were broadcast. Within 30 days, APMG must designate a compliance officer who will oversee development of an EAS compliance plan. APMG must establish written operating procedures to ensure compliance with the EAS rules, specifically including internal policies to ensure tones or simulations are not transmitted except in an emergency or authorized test. Within 90 days, the plan must be implemented to ensure that all covered employees follow EAS rules. That includes a training program, the Commission said. The organization will need to file a compliance report with the FCC 120 days after the effective date and follow-ups 1 and 2 years after. The voluntary contribution of $86,400 to the U.S. Department of Treasury must be paid within 30 days.
DXLOOK has released a new DRAP, or D-Region Absorption Prediction View, that helps amateur radio operators understand and visualize HF absorption caused by solar X-ray flares in real time. D-region absorption is a major cause of sudden daytime HF blackouts, particularly on lower frequency bands. DXLOOK's new DRAP view presents existing D-region absorption data in a band-aware geographic format, allowing operators to visually assess where and on which HF bands absorption may be occurring at a given moment. The DRAP view is primarily driven by official data from the NOAA Space Weather Prediction Center using the global frequency for 1 decibel absorption product based on GOES satellite X-ray measurements. This dataset identifies for each region of the Earth the highest HF frequency expected to experience significant D-layer absorption at the current time. When NOAA data is unavailable or becomes outdated, DXLOOK automatically switches to a physics-based fallback model derived from real-time solar position calculations. The system clearly indicates when calculated data is being used instead of measured NOAA data, ensuring transparency for users. Absorption regions are displayed as smooth color-coded zones aligned with amateur HF bands, allowing operators to quickly assess which frequencies may be degraded. The DRAP view integrates with DXLOOK's existing MUF, spot, and propagation tools, helping users understand the full operating window between D-layer absorption at lower frequencies and ionospheric refraction limits at higher ones. The new DRAP view is especially useful for contest operators, DXers, and emergency communications groups assessing HF reliability during solar events, as well as for operators trying to understand sudden shortwave fadeouts during daylight hours. The DRAP view is now live and available to all users on dxlook.com. DXLOOK is a real-time HF and VHF propagation visualization platform built by amateur radio operators for the amateur radio community. It combines live reception reports, space weather data, and physics-based modeling to help operators better understand band conditions and propagation behavior worldwide.
Higher levels of carbon dioxide, CO2, in the Earth's atmosphere could harm radio communications by enhancing a disruptive effect in the ionosphere. According to researchers at Kyushu University in Japan, who modeled the effect numerically for the first time, this little-known consequence of climate change could have significant impacts on shortwave radio systems such as those employed in broadcasting, air traffic control, and navigation. While increasing CO2 levels in the atmosphere warm the Earth's surface, they actually cool the ionosphere, explains study leader Hushu Leo of Kyushu's Faculty of Science. This cooling doesn't mean it is all good. It decreases the air density in the ionosphere and accelerates wind circulation. These changes affect the orbits and lifespans of satellites and space debris and also disrupt radio communications through localized small-scale plasma irregularities. These results are exciting because they show that the impacts of CO2 increase can extend all the way from Earth's surface to altitudes at which HF and VHF radio waves propagate and communication satellites orbit, Liu tells Physics World. This may be good news for ham radio amateurs, as you will likely receive more signals from faraway countries more often. For radio communications, however, especially at HF and VHF frequencies employed for aviation, ships, and rescue operations, it means more noise and frequent disruptions in communications, and hence safety. The telecommunication industry might therefore need to adjust their frequencies or facility design in the future, he concluded.
Hello, and welcome to the DX Corner for your weekly dose of DX. I'm Bill, AJ8B. Here is some news for those of you who send QSL cards internationally and use IRCs. Quote, IRCs soon to be discontinued. The International Reply Coupon, or IRC, introduced in 1907, has enabled global postage payments for over a century, symbolizing universality and cooperation among UPU member countries. At the 28th Universal Postal Congress in September of 2025, members decided to discontinue the IRC as of December 31st, 2026, so in a year, reflecting a shift toward a digital postal services. In recognition of its legacy, a commemorative product will be released to celebrate the IRC's historical significance in global philately and postal collaboration. Bernie, W3UR, notes that most countries have already stopped using IRCs. And I have to say, in my 40 years of DXing, I probably only used the IRCs a couple of times, but I also know there's guys that heavily relied on it at one point. So it's just another thing that's changing. The following DX information comes from Bernie, W3UR, editor of the Daily DX, the Weekly DX, and the How's DX column in QST. If you would like a free 2-week trial of the Daily DX, your only source of real-time DX information, just drop me a note at thedxmentor@gmail.com. Well, first we have some bad news, and this hit me personally. Sierra 2, or Bangladesh, Sierra 21 Alpha Mike, and Sierra 21 Romeo Charlie say that their planned IOTA AS-127 operation has been postponed until sometime in 2026. Cited are logistical challenges and operational constraints in the region and, quote, adequate resource availability concerns, end quote. And I say this hit me personally because I was planning on Bangladesh being number 327 for me, but I guess it's not going to happen right away. Just have to be patient. But we can counter that with a lot of good news. So let's get on to that. Quote, U.S. amateurs to receive expanded 60-meter privileges. The U.S. Federal Communications Commission has authorized expanded use of the 60-meter band for U.S. amateur radio operators following rules adopted at the World Radio Telecommunication Conference 2015, or WARC 15. The new regulations, including a 15-watt effective isotropic radiated power, or EIRP, power limit, will take effect 30 days after they are published in the Federal Register. Use of this band remains on a secondary basis. The full FCC report and order is available online, and the ARRL provides more details on its website. And I will tell you, I have yet to get on 60 meters, but my buddy, WAGEX, Joe, is the godfather of 60 meters. He has several hundred countries confirmed on 60, so I know it's a real good DX band. And if you have interest in 60 meters, or if you're already on it, you need to get Joe's 60-meter newsletter, which is published about twice a month. And you can get that by sending me an email at thedxmentor@gmail.com, and I'll get you set up. So let's turn our attention to Cambodia, X-Ray United. Tom, Delta Lima 7, Boston Ocean, will be on the air as X-Ray Uniform 7, Golf November Yankee, December 22nd to January 18th. Tom will be on 160 through 6, CW, sideband, and FT8, concentrating on the lower bands. And you can QSL that operation to Delta Juliet 4 Whiskey Kilo or use LOTW, Club Log, or EQSL. From Azerbaijan, we have the following. 4 kilo stroke Delta Lima 4 X-Ray Tango, Jan, will be on 40 and 20 through 10 meters sideband CW and FT8, December 26th to January 3rd. He will be on the air casually, AK holiday style. For QSL, it's LOTW, Club Log, OQRS, and QRZ. From the United Arab Emirates, we have Alpha 60 Qatar, which is Alpha 60 Quebec Alpha Tango Alpha Romeo, which will be QRV from December 18th to the 22nd. You can join in Qatar's celebration with that call. Some individual ops in the UAE may also use the call and add stroke 1 or stroke 2 or something similar. From the Central African Republic, which is Tango Lima, we get the following. Charlie Tango 1 Echo November Delta, Carlos, reminds us that Charlie Radio 7 Boston Norway Whiskey, Jiao, will be operating as Tango Lima 8 Boston Norway Whiskey from Central African Republic for 6 months starting in December of 2025. His first activity will take place from December 20th to the 25th using sideband FT8 on 40, 20, 15, and 10 meters. QSLs will be uploaded to LOTW, QRZ logbook, and via the Portuguese QSL Bureau. From South America, we have French Guiana, Fox Yankee. Peter, Fox 4 Golf Peter Kilo, will be on as Tango Oscar 2 Fox Yankee, December 22nd to January 15th from French Guiana. So give that a listen. From Guatemala, which is Tango Golf, we have the following. Tango Golf 9, stroke Alpha Fox 4 Charlie Zulu, will be on the air, again, quote, holiday style, December 7th to January 5th, mostly digital modes on 40 through 10 meters. He will upload his log to LOTW, EQSL, and Club Log. So let's move on to South Sudan, which is a little rarer. Yankee India 1 Delta Zulu, also known as Zulu 81 Delta, DIA, contact with the UN WFP in South Sudan runs until March 10th, 2026, with a possible 11-month extension pending approval. Due to infrequent travel and rotating work schedule that includes leave every 6 weeks, radio activity is limited to free time, mostly on the weekends. The author is currently in Istanbul and will return to Juba on December 15th and could be very active as Zulu 81 Delta the following weekend. And I got to tell you, now's the time that he's going to be active. And I looked at my log and it turned out that 1220 and 1221, I worked him last year on 2 different bands. So I know he likes this time of year. We have a new prefix from Trinidad Tobago. Whiskey Alpha 3 DX, Earl, will be on as 9 Yankee 9 Delta X-Ray from Aruca, December 17th to the 29th on 40 through 10 meter FT8 and FT4. This is the first known issuance of the 9 Yankee prefix. Earl says to QSL directly only to Whiskey Alpha 3 DX or use LOTW. U.S. stations who want direct QSL should include an SASE. He will upload to his log to Club Log as well. And finally, Charlie 5 Yankee Kilo, the Gambia. Andre, Oscar November 7 Yankee Kilo, is QRV from the Gambia until January 25th. He is operating as Charlie 5 Yankee Kilo on sideband, RIDI, PSK, FT8, FT4, and some CW on 20, 17, 15, 12, and 10. It's a lot to remember. QSL only via LOTW, EQSL, or direct to Oscar November 7 Yankee Kilo. He posts his logbook on his website. So here's just a little information about future DXpeditions. First of all, Sao Tome and Principe, S9 Bravo Victor. Beirut, S53 Bravo Victor, will operate casually as S9 Bravo Victor February 5th to the 20th, with thanks to Bastian, owner of the Delicias da Ilhas, who did the work to get the Sao Tome and Principe licenses set up. It is a, quote, an amazing, quiet, and open to all directions location, he said. Barrett plans to be on 60, 40, 30, and 15 meter CW and sideband. He will be using an ICOM IC7000 with verticals for 60, 40, and 30, and a dipole for 40 and 15. He will update Club Log Live, and he cautions that internet service may be a little unreliable, so, be patient. Manual log upload will be made every several days. Barut says not to send cards to the Bureau, quote, as they will not find my house. He will send direct cards once he is home in Slovenia via OQRS only. So I'm looking forward to that one. There was a huge DXpedition there 18 months ago or so, and I got them on quite a few band slots, but not quite a few modes. So I'm looking forward to that.
Coming up next, from the most interesting mind of Philip Nedlinger, KA4KOE, comes the first chapter in a new series called Dead Electrical Dudes, in which he takes a curious and humorous look at the movers and shakers that helped kindle our amateur radio hobby and other radio stuff. This is a truly radical look at the past of radio development, narrated by our historian Will Rogers, K5WLR, right here on This Week in Amateur Radio.
And now back to our DX mentor, Bill Sawyers, AJ8B.
So here's one about Victor Uniform 7, Lakshadweep Islands. Sarath, Victor Uniform 2, Radio Sierra, is team leader for the 12-operator AU-7RS operation, January 10th to the 22nd, 2026. Because of the high cost of lodging, equipment shipping, and import fees, and generator fuel, they seek donations via PayPal to info@sreteek.com. And you can QSL via M0OXO or OQRS. Serbia, Yankee Uniform. In celebration of the IARU Region 1 Young Radio Operators Month, Serbian amateurs may use the special call signs Yellow Tango 25 YOTA and Yellow Uniform 25 YOTA through December of 2025. So give a listen for that special event. And finally, from the Shetland Islands, we find out that LZ1 Alpha Alpha Whiskey, EVO, is headed to the Bulgarian Antarctic base St. Clement Ordosky on Livingston Island, South Shetland Islands, which is IOTA AN-010. He plans to operate as LZ0 Alpha during his free time from late December 2025 to mid-February 2026. The base, located at 62 degrees 38 minutes south and 60 degrees 21 minutes west, is in the eastern part of Livingston Island and has been permanently staffed since December 11th, 1993. And I've worked several of these different folks that are down there, and some of the QSL cards you get back are amazing. So if you have any interest at all, try to get them in the log. The DX Mentor features a new podcast episode this coming weekend, a discussion with Carlo, Italy Kilo 1 Hotel Juliet Sierra. We discussed the WWA 2026 contest. This is a great event and perhaps the best kept secret in contesting. I knew nothing about it. It's been around for several years, and I kind of like to stay on top of this. So check out the podcast and let me know what you think. And if you want to follow all of the latest DX podcast and YouTube releases, you should check out the DX Mentor Facebook page and subscribe to be kept up to date on all of the DX activities. Well, speaking of the WWA, I do have a contest update. I know that the ARRL contest sheet is read elsewhere in this podcast, and the contests that I mention are sometimes redundant. However, there are a few contests that I have found to be especially useful for DXers who are trying to fill band slots or work an all-time new one. The DX Mentor, as I mentioned, has a new episode that introduces, at least to me, a new contest called the Worldwide Award, or WWA. So what is the Worldwide Award? Well, the WWA is the first international radio project that aims to aggregate the largest number of countries in the world into a single event, excluding the already well-known World Contest. Born from the experience of the Ham Innovation team during the 3 years of organizing WRTC 2022, it is now the world's leading radio event in terms of the number of QSOs and activators. WWA has been growing continuously since its first edition in January of 2024, and after its great success, it was decided to organize an even faster edition called the Sprint Worldwide Award in July. All technology is managed by hamaward.cloud, the most well-known and powerful platform on the market for organizing large radio events where automating the coordination of activators and providing the most data and information in real time is essential. When does the WWA take place? The WWA aims to become the most followed radio event in the world over time, with two editions each year. In 2026, the first session is from January 1st to January 31st. Yep, that's 1 month. The second session will be held from June 29th to July 5th, which is just 1 week, which is why they call that one a sprint. Not to go into too much detail, however, there are registered, quote, activators, and the rest of us are just hunters. And you should register, there's no charge, you should register to be a hunter. For the entire month of January, you will work as many of the activators as you can. You can work the same activator each day if you choose to, and you'll get points each day as if it's the first time, but you can't work them any more than once a day. The entire process is handled by the contest platform. You can find out instantly how you're doing relative to everyone else. There is no log to submit as activators are streaming their QSOs to the cloud, and it's all done in real time, and all the information is gathered instantly. Last January, there were 3.7 million QSOs logged in the month of January. Is this the future of contesting? Perhaps it is. One way to find out who the activators are is that the majority of the folks that registered have WWA in the second half of their call sign. But for more information, you can check out the webpage at hamaward.cloud and listen to the DX Mentor podcast. Of course, you can always send me an email if you have some interest or if this is confusing, because it really is a new concept. Again, that's dxmentor@gmail.com. Let me know if you participate in the contest, what you think, and how you do. Until next week, this is Bill, AJB, saying 7-3, and thanks to my XYL Karen for her love and support. I hope to hear you in the pileups. Have a great DX week.
Hello, and welcome to a new series here on This Week in Amateur Radio. I'm Will Rogers, K5WLR, TWIAR's historian. From the most interesting mind of Philip Neglinger, KA4KOE, comes the first chapter in a new series called Dead Electrical Dudes, in which he takes a curious and humorous look at the movers and shakers that helped kindle our amateur radio hobby and other radio-related stuff. This is a truly radical look at the past of radio development. Philip has presented these dudes on EHAM over the last several years and has kindly granted us permission to use his materials here on This Week in Amateur Radio. And so we begin with Dead Electrical Dudes number 1. This month's stiff, James Clerk Maxwell. Entered mortal coil 13 June 1831. Assumed room temperature 5 November 1879. Our subject this time is none other than James Clerk Maxwell, father of all that we hams hold sacred. Jimmy's mathematical formulas, which had as a foundation earlier research by Faraday on electricity and magnetism, predicted the existence of electromagnetic waves, i.e. radio. These formulas are quite complex, and even Philip, with a full year of college calculus under his belt, courtesy of a questionable institution of higher learning, after all, they did admit him, didn't they, had difficulty digesting them. Heck, even I, with a vocational education bachelor of science degree, haven't a clue either. Here are the formulas below for your enjoyment. Number 1, div E equals 0. Number 2, div H equals 0. Number 3, curl E equals C times dH divided by dt. Number 4, curl H equals C times dE divided by dt, where E equals electric field strength, H equals magnetic field strength, curl equals rotation or rate of change and vorticity, div equals divergence, dH divided by dt and dE divided by dt are partial differentiations with respect to time, and X, of course, stands for multiplication. Okay, you may ask, what does all this gobbledygook mean? Simply put, a changing electrical current in a conductor will set up an expanding electromagnetic field, propagating outward at the speed of light. This is the foundation on how transmitters work. Conversely, an electromagnetic field intersecting a conductor will induce a varying electrical current. This is the foundation on how receivers work. A few years after Jimmy's death, all of this mess was proven to be true when a particularly bright German researcher, Heinrich Hertz, demonstrated the existence of radio waves via experimental means. Our hero was vindicated. Maxwell was not a particularly good teacher at St. Andrews University in Great Britain. Maxwell did other important work on the orbital dynamics of Saturn's rings and developed the kinetic theory of gases. Maxwell's theories on electromagnetic radiation, however, were later considered to be the greatest contribution to science in the 19th century. Jimmy died quietly in bed at peace with himself and his maker. With thanks to Philip Neglinger, KA4KOE, for allowing us to use his materials, I'm Will Rogers, K5WLR, reporting for This Week in amateur radio.
Foundations of Amateur Radio. Recently it occurred to me that I haven't been using HF in my shack for much longer than I'd care to admit. Over the years I've spoken about my shack and how it's set up. More on that shortly. I effectively went off air when I decommissioned the computer that was running tools like FLDigi and WSJTX, mainly because it was too slow, for example taking a good minute to launch a copy of Firefox. After that I repurposed my HF antenna for use with my ultra-low power whisper beacon experiments, and essentially ceased being a functional HF station. There's other forces at work which I'll get to, but before I do, in discussion with a fellow amateur we discovered that my desire to get back on air on HF is essentially the same journey that a new amateur might make, and the idea was hatched to document the process and share it with you. In the past, you've heard me say that the answer to most questions associated with amateur radio is, it depends. As a new or returning amateur, this might not be very helpful if you don't know what it depends on. So I'm going to attempt to describe the process of determining how to get to the answers required to make a station. Now, before I start, I'd like to talk about money. I'm raising this up front because your access to a budget determines many of the choices that are open to you. You could interpret that to mean that you need money, and while that helps, it's not universally true. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that you could get on air and make noise using nothing more than a mobile phone and an internet connection, which, truth be told, is pretty much the minimum requirement to enjoy my thoughts. So perhaps that's the base requirement. That said, even if you don't have access to that, there's other options that we'll no doubt explore together. So keep that in mind. I think that the very first thing to consider is what you think of when you hear the term amateur radio. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Amateur radio is a great many things to different people. For some, it means a handheld radio and chatting with mates on the local repeater. For others, it means a full-blown HF contest station with multiple antennas and radios, with integrated logging in a dedicated building. For others, it means logging into a remote web SDR and listening to the bands, decoding interesting signals, and license permitting transmitting remotely across the internet. In other words, the amateur radio experience is unique to you. What you get from it is dependent on you, and nobody else. As an aside, that's also true for licensing. If you have a beginner's license, like my foundation license, then it's entirely up to you to decide if and when you add extra privileges. Foundations of amateur radio, well, its predecessor, What Use Is an F-Core, emerged specifically in response to amateurs around me who continue to, let's be kind and call it, encourage me to upgrade to a real license. 15 years on, I'm still a foundation beginner, and thus far I have yet to run out of things to do or talk about, so keep that in mind. I think that covers the disclaimers. No doubt more will occur to me as we continue on this journey. For the first decade or so of having a license, most of my activity was done in my car, a mobile shack of sorts. I didn't have access to a space where I could set up a radio without running the risk of someone tripping over coax, or a landlord complaining within an hour of me erecting a temporary vertical. In other words, my mobile shack was born from necessity. It was helpful in exploring the limitless variation of operating positions, as in locations and their impact on propagation, antenna performance, local interference, and plenty of other lessons. So even if you don't have a permanent space to operate, there's plenty of amateur radio to go round. When I finally moved to a place where I had space, I started the process of putting together my shack. Initially, it was pretty much integrated with my home office. This sort of worked, but both the office and the shack suffered from this combination. So my first observation is that, in my experience, setting aside a dedicated space for a shack is a good idea. Now, right now, as I'm telling you that, to the bottom right of my computer screen is the head of my Yaesu FT857D, connected to a remote rig, a pair of devices that replace the serial cable between the head and the radio with a network connection. The remote rig is connected to a Wi-Fi router, which runs a dedicated wireless connection across the room to the Wi-Fi router that's connected to the radio, sitting on what's left of my shack. It's how I run the weekly F-Troop net. It's sitting there because I need to be able to access my computer to make log entries and track who's next in the round-robin discussion. And as I said, I've decommissioned my shack computer. Which brings me to the second point. Setting up a shack doesn't happen in isolation. You're likely to have existing infrastructure of some sort. It might be a fixed location for power points, it might be a previously drilled hole for incoming coax, it might be a bolted bench. Whatever it is, it's something that you need to take into account. It's also something that you need to consider in terms of feasibility. Just because something is the way it is today doesn't mean that it has to stay the same for the next decade. I've previously discussed the evolution of my shack, based on a 35-year-old wooden IKEA trestle table, all of 1.2 square metres, complete with holes from taking it around Australia for several years in the back of a van. It's currently got a wire mesh shelving unit on top and a pegboard strapped to the back. The legs are adorned with power boards, and as I said, the head of my radio is on the other side of the room. There's all to say that building a shack doesn't happen in isolation. The local environment will determine what's possible and what's not. I'm not here to tell you what to do, I'm here to help you figure out what a shack looks like in your environment. Note that I've not talked in any way about what equipment to get, what, if any, antenna to install, or what else is required. These are all part of the "it depends," and I'll talk about that soon. I'm Ono, Victor Kilo 6, Foxtrot Lima, Alpha Bravo.
A great after-holiday gift, ARRL Kids Day. Twice a year, the ARRL offers an event designed to promote amateur radio to our youth. It's Kids Day. John Ross, KD8 IDJ, is here with more.
Kids Day number 1 takes place on the first Saturday of the year, and for 2026, that's January 3rd. The event runs from 1800 UTC through 2359 UTC, and you can operate as much or as little as you like. It's all designed to give the on-air experience to young people and hopefully foster interest in getting licenses of their own. It's also intended to give older hams a chance to share their station and love for amateur radio with their children. Here's how it works. You can invite your kids or your grandkids to your station, explain how it works, and then have them take turns talking on the radio. You could also share the excitement with your neighbors, a scout troop, a church group, or the general public at a library or a shopping mall. Then the real fun starts. Take pictures, write your story, and send them to ARRL. With a signed release form, your story can appear in ARRL publications like QST as part of the Kids Day and Youth Write-Ups, Strays Upfront, and more. And you can send your stories to contest@arrl.org. Then, the part that will light up the kids' eyes even more, that Kids Day Certificate of Participation. It's a downloadable PDF, and every kid who has participated gets to take one home and hang it on their wall. I'm John Ross, KD8IDJ.
You can use most any frequency from 10 through 80 meters. You can also use one of your favorite repeaters with permission from the repeater's owner. Be sure to observe third-party restrictions when making DX QSOs. Then the part that will light up the kids' eyes even more, a Kids Day Certificate of Participation. It's downloadable, and every kid who has participated gets to take one home to hang on their wall. Sign up is easy at Kids Day on the ARRL website. You'll get all of the information you'll need to make this after-holiday gift a yearly event. And remember, there is another ARRL Kids Day on the third Saturday in June.
Bruce Page, KK5DO, is here now with this week's AMSAT report. Bruce?
Thanks, John. December was a busy month. South Korea launched their satellites, and the ISS deployed 5 CubeSats at the beginning of the month. The ones operating on amateur frequencies are SilverSat, RHOK-SAT, Content Cube, EagleSat-2, and Forest Prominio. SilverSat automatically relays images and telemetry to its ground network, which is then posted to social media. The CW beacon was heard sending at 16 words per minute under the call sign WP2XGW. RHOK-SAT has telemetry on 435.425 MHz using 9600 FSK, while Content Cube is using 437.020 MHz GMSK for its telemetry. EagleSat-2 uses 437.165 MHz and 19K2 GFSK for its data from two experiments. One is the Cosmic Ray Payload and the other Memory Degradation Experiment. Finally, 4S Promineo is transmitting telemetry on 437.400 MHz. As this is our last report before the Christmas holiday, I would like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a happy holiday season on behalf of AMSAT and myself. I hope you make that DX contact or satellite contact you were hoping for. This is Bruce Page, KK5DO. Back to you, John.
And thanks, Bruce, for that report.
It is time for this week's look at the state of solar weather and the terrestrial propagation forecast. Solar activity reached high levels this past week when region 4299 produced an M1.1 minor flare on December 6th. Shortly after, the region produced an M8.1 strong flare. Associated with the M8.1 flare was a 1100 SFU-10 flare, a 1,143 km per second Type 2 sweep, and also a Type 4 sweep. A sweep, by the way, is a solar radio burst that sweeps through the RF spectrum as the energy moves outward from the sun. Some development was observed around the leader spot of region 4299, while slight decay was noted among the trailer spots. Region 4296 and 4294 remain the largest of the visible disk, but have only produced C-class activity in the past 24 hours. Only minor changes were observed among the other numbered active regions, and activity is now moderate. Coronal mass ejection activity was observed from both M-class flares. A slow Earth-directed CME was observed from the M1.1, and a faster full halo Earth-directed CME was observed from the M8.1 flare. According to spaceweather.com, it touched off a G2 moderate geomagnetic storm on December 10th. Solar wind parameters reflected a disturbed near-Earth environment throughout the reporting period. Solar wind speeds showed little reaction to the magnetic transient, averaging 375 kilometers per second throughout the reporting period. The phi angle was oriented toward the sun, which was negative for the majority of the reporting period, then slowly rotated around to away from the sun, or positive, 1.5 hours after the arrival of the transient. The electron flux is expected to become elevated through December 14th as a coronal hole high-speed stream originating from the negative polarity coronal hole in the northern hemisphere becomes geoeffective. The flux is likely to surpass the 1000 PFU threshold during the diurnal maxima. As complex regions in the western hemisphere move beyond the limb, chances for the proton flux to become elevated decrease. There is a 10% chance for an S1 miter radiation storming event on December 12th, with chances decreasing to 1% by December 14th. For more information concerning radio propagation, visit the ARRL Technical Information Service and read a quick guide to HF propagation using solar indices. And also check out the propagation page of Carl Wetzel-Swab, K9LA.
Just ahead in radio sport this week on December 20th, it's the Feldhell Sprint, that's digital. Also on December 20th, the OKDX RIDI contest, digital as well. December 20th, the RAC Winter Contest, CW and phone. December 20th and 21st, the Croatian DX Contest, CW and phone. And on December 21st, the ARRL Rookie Roundup, that is CW. Remember to visit the ARRL contest calendar for more events and information in your area. Upcoming section, state, and division conventions, January 10th, Ham Radio University, ARRL New York City Long Island Section Convention, that's in Brookville, New York. And on January 16th through the 17th, it's the Southwest Florida Regional Ham Fest, ARRL Southern Florida Section Convention, that's in Fort Myers, Florida. And remember to search the ARRL Ham Fest calendar and convention database to find more events in your area.
ARRL's Straight Key Night, or SKN, is coming up soon. Every year on January 1st, Straight Key Night is on the air from 0000 UTC through 2359 UTC. This 24-hour event is not a contest. Rather, it is a day dedicated to celebrating our CW heritage. Participants are encouraged to get on the air and simply make enjoyable, conversational CW QSOs. The use of straight keys or bugs to send CW is preferred. There are no points scored, and all who participate are winners. All authorized amateur frequencies may be used, but activity has traditionally been centered on the HF bands. Logbook entries for Straight Key Night must be received by January 31st, 2026. Votes for Best Fist and Most Interesting QSO will be tabulated and included in the results. The 2025 SKN results indicated that 144 participants reported 945 contacts. While many were seasoned CW operators, some participants noted that they made their first CW contacts in many years during the 2025 event. All you need is your favorite straight key or bug. Many participants dust off vintage radios and keys and put them back into service each year just for this event. So get your fist ready, grab your key, and enjoy a fun New Year's Day on the air. For more information, visit Straight Key Night on the ARRL website.
The first ham television transmission from the International Space Station since 2018 occurred on October 18, 2025. As part of an ISS contact with the first Radford Samel Scouts group in the United Kingdom, ham TV was utilized in addition to FM voice over onboard amateur radio equipment. ARIS has uploaded a compilation of video feeds received from ground stations all over Europe. The ham TV setup on ISS has been out of commission for repairs since 2018, but was just recently brought back online in July.
Christmas Eve 2025 offers a great opportunity to hear radio transmissions from vintage equipment still operational for over 100 years. On Wednesday, December 24, 2025, the World Heritage Grymeton radio station in southern Sweden is scheduled to broadcast a traditional Christmas message to the world on 17.2 kilohertz CW using a 200 kilowatt Alexanderson alternator with the call sign SAQ. The transmission begins at 0800 UTC. The event can be viewed on YouTube live stream beginning at 0720 UTC. QSL cards will be available. Meanwhile, the 2025 Fessenden commemorative transmission is scheduled to take place on December 24th and 31st at 2100 UTC on 486 kilohertz from Forest, Virginia, in honor of the legend of Reginald Fessenden. Fessenden was a pioneering inventor known as the father of voice radio, and for his work involving radio and sonar. Brian Justin, WA1ZMS, will control the broadcast under a new Part 5 call sign of WQ2XQA.
Think satellites are immune to seasons? Well, think again. They experience orbital summer and orbital winter with extreme effects. Because of the position of the Earth as well as the orbital path, satellites experience periods when they are entirely out of Earth's shadow, or orbital summer, and periods when they are in eclipse for most or all of their orbits, or orbital winter. What does this mean for the batteries and temperature? When fully illuminated, solar panels are generating nonstop power and batteries are fully charged. But orbital summer isn't just about light, it's about heat. Without the shadow of an eclipse to cool down, the satellite heats up, putting stress on batteries and other components. Conversely, when orbital winter happens, a satellite will experience maximum eclipse time. When in eclipse, batteries may not charge sufficiently. Satellites must survive long periods in the dark, relying heavily on batteries and internal heaters to keep them from freezing. Orbital summer and orbital winter are primary contributors to satellite failure and a major challenge to those who build and operate satellites of all types.
NASA ended months of speculation about the next flight of Boeing's Starliner spacecraft, confirming that the vehicle will carry only cargo to the International Space Station. NASA and Boeing are now targeting no earlier than April 2026 to fly the uncrewed Starliner 1 mission, the space agency said. Launching by next April will require completion of rigorous test, certification, and mission readiness activities, NASA added in a statement. Starliner's first flight in December 2019 without crew had to be truncated after the software problems plagued the vehicle. It was nearly lost shortly after launch, as well as before atmospheric re-entry. It did not make a planned rendezvous with the space station. The second mission, Orbital Flight Test 2, took place in May 2022. Because of problems on the previous mission, this spacecraft also flew uncrewed. The flight was more successful, reaching the space station despite some thruster issues. NASA then spent more than 2 years testing Starliner on the ground before its first crewed flight in 2024, carrying NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams, KD-5PLB. During its approach to the space station, the Starliner spacecraft once again experienced serious thruster issues. However, the life and death nature of this flight was not revealed until nearly a year later. Starliner ultimately docked with the station, but after heated deliberations, NASA informed Boeing that the vehicle would return to Earth uncrewed. As a result, a Dragon mission was launched later in 2024, carrying just 2 astronauts instead of a full complement of 4. This allowed for the safe return of Wilmore and Williams in March of 2025.
It is time for this week's edition of AMSAT Satellite Shorts from all over. First, at next week's World Radio Communications Conference, WRC 25, governments will face a choice that goes to the heart of how we monitor our warming planet. Some regulators are wondering whether to open part of the X-band, the 8.025 to 8.4 gigahertz range, used by Earth observation satellites to 5G and 6G mobile networks. Several major telecom operators have been pushing for this move, arguing that they could use this spectrum more efficiently and pay countries handsomely for the right to do so. 11 satellite-focused companies have formed the Remote Sensing Collective to resist the change. They've done this because the satellites we depend on to understand the environment depend in turn on the X-band. Next, we find out that last month, Chinese astronauts on board the country's Tiangong space station discovered cracks in the window of their return vehicle, the Shenzhou 20, which officials suspected were the result of a space debris strike. The spacecraft was deemed not safe enough to return its crew, prompting an orbital game of musical chairs as the China Manned Space Agency launched an emergency uncrewed replacement spacecraft, Shenzhou 22, to the station. 2 Shenzhou 21 astronauts embarked on the mission's first spacewalk on December 9, inspecting and photographing a damaged spacecraft window, which triggered an earlier emergency launch. CMSA did not publicize results. And finally this week, word has come around that NASA has lost contact with the Mars Atmosphere and Volatile Evolution, or MAVEN, a spacecraft that has circled the planet for more than a decade, collecting science data and serving as a key communications relay.
An Australian company wants to join efforts to study a rare space event conducting its own flyby of the asteroid Apophis when it makes close approach to Earth in 2029. Sydney-based HEO Robotics, a provider of commercial satellites to satellite imagery, wants to add to the international missions already planning to get up close to the 340-meter asteroid Apophis as it zooms by Earth in April 2029 by buying a satellite near the end of its life up in geostationary orbit and use its remaining fuel. Satellites in the geostationary belt, or GEO, orbit 35,786 kilometers above the equator. Spacecraft nearing the end of their lives use their remaining fuel to head into a so-called graveyard orbit above GEO to take themselves out of the way of operational satellites. HEO aims to buy a satellite near the end of its mission lifetime and, using a little more fuel than needed for the graveyard trip, make a close approach to Apophis, which will pass within the GEO belt when it makes its close approach to Earth on Friday, April 13th, 2029.
Amateur Radio Digital Communications has launched 4Net Connect, a new portal designed to make it easier for ham radio operators to gain access to and experiment with subnets of the 44.0.0.0/8 IP address space. Through the portal, hams can apply for VPN access to 44net, which comes with a dedicated 44net IP address. Tunnel services are provided through WireGuard with options to add IP networks and autonomous system numbers. Proof of ham radio license is required. Hams can get started at connect.44net.cloud/. An overview of 44net is available on the 44net wiki.
Are you an experienced operations leader who is passionate about delivering exceptional membership services and driving commercial growth? Or are you an advertising agent looking for a new opportunity where you can demonstrate your strong sales capabilities, excellent communication skills, and your ability to build and maintain long-term client relationships? The Radio Society of Great Britain is seeking a full-time, highly motivated operations manager to be part of its senior leadership team based at the RSGB headquarters in Bedford, UK. This is a key role responsible for ensuring our members receive outstanding service, and the successful candidate will need to be commercially astute, organized, people-focused, and excited by the opportunity to make a meaningful impact. The Society is also looking for a new contractor or agency to work with to support the development of RSGB advertising and contribute to the growth of its publications and digital platforms. If you are a professional, proactive, and excited by either of these opportunities, go to the RSGB website to find out more. The application deadline for both is January 4th, 2026.
Registration is now open for the 2026 sessions of the ARRL Teachers Institute on Wireless Technology. The Teachers Institute is ARRL's professional development program designed to help classroom teachers elevate their STEM, or science, technology, engineering, and math programs through the use of wireless technology, and is a major part of ARRL's advocacy of inspiring youth. A full summer of sessions will be held at ARRL headquarters in Newington, Connecticut, as well as several sessions around the country. Be sure to check back often. More sessions will be added closer to summer. If you're interested in bringing the Teachers Institute to your area and know an administrator in your local schools, we would love to discuss the opportunity with them. To learn more, visit www.arrl.org/TI.
ARRL, the National Association for Amateur Radio, will host the 9th Annual Ham-Sci Workshop, March 14th and 15th, 2026, at Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut, with activities also occurring at ARRL headquarters in nearby Newington. With a close-up look at the workshop, we go to John Ross, KD8IDJ, with this report.
Organizers for the Ham Radio Science Citizen Investigation AMSAT community are working hard to put together a memorable event that will bring together amateur radio operators, citizen scientists, students, and professional researchers. The 2026 theme, Discovering Science Through Ham Radio, highlights the vibrant intersection of amateur radio and scientific discovery. The 2026 workshop will showcase achievements across the community, including the latest advances in ionospheric research, personal space weather station development, meteor scatter, propagation studies, and the expanding use of technology and techniques for real-time radio propagation sensing. Participants can expect more than 50 oral and poster presentations. The abstract submission window is open now through January 20th, 2026. Invited to tutorials and a Saturday evening banquet featuring a keynote speaker from a prominent member of the community. Attendees will also enjoy a visit to ARRL's national headquarters. A variety of registration options are available. For more information, visit the HamSci 2026 workshop page and read the full story at ARRL News. I'm John Ross, KD8IDJ.
As John mentioned, participants can expect more than 50 oral and poster presentations, invited tutorials, and a Saturday evening banquet featuring a keynote address from a prominent member of the community. Attendees will also enjoy a visit to ARRL's national headquarters with tours of the ARRL Lab, W1HQ Radio Laboratory, and opportunities to get on the air from W1AW, the Hiram P. Maxim Memorial Station. Most attendees will participate in person with a virtual option to be announced. The workshop welcomes contributions and participation from all sectors of the ham-sci community, including amateur radio operators and citizen scientists, professional researchers, academics and educators, students at all levels. Presentation topics may explore ionospheric and propagation effects of geomagnetic storms, solar flares, eclipses, and meteor showers, personal space weather station updates, radio propagation modeling, novel analytical techniques, applications of ham-sci research to amateur radio operations, general interest topics in arts, literature, and history with a science or amateur radio connection. Registration is now open. A variety of registration options are available, including full weekend and single-day packages. The full weekend, Saturday and Sunday programs, plus both dinners, is $200. Details on the virtual attendance options will be released at a later date. There is a call for abstracts. The abstract submission window is now open. Submissions up to 350 words for both oral presentations and 20-minute slots, and poster sessions are invited through January 20th, 2026. The Workshop Science Committee will notify accepted presenters by mid-February. Go to the workshop webpage for details. Here is the travel information. Bradley International Airport in Windsor Locks, Connecticut, is the closest airport to Central Connecticut State University, located at 1650 Stanley Street, New Britain, Connecticut. The conference will be held in the Student Center. There are many options for lodging at area hotels. Additional travel and accommodations details will be announced in early 2026. The organizing committee includes representatives from the University of Scranton, New Jersey Institute of Technology, and ARRL. Financial support includes grants from the United States National Science Foundation and Amateur Radio Digital Communications. For more information on the workshop, registration, and abstract submission, follow the HamSci 2026 workshop page at hamsci.org/HamSci 2026.
The National Association of Broadcasters is urging the government to slow down its fast-moving upper C-band proceeding. The NAB is backing a request by aviation groups, which are seeking a 30-day extension of the comment deadline. They say more time is needed since the current schedule is too quick for a technically complex spectrum proposal that could reshape how broadcasters distribute satellite programming. In a letter to the Federal Communications Commission, the NAB says the added time would materially improve the quality and completeness of the record while still preserving the FCC's ability to meet the July 2027 deadline set by Congress to auction portions of the C-band. The FCC proceeding in GN docket number 25-59 is examining a range of options for the upper C-band, including auctioning up to 180 MHz, with the ultimate goal of maximizing the amount of spectrum for next-gen wireless services as generational aviation safety upgrades occur in the adjacent band. The issue has worried broadcasters that legacy services would get pushed out of the band, which has unique capabilities that allow a single satellite to cover the lower 48 states as well as Alaska and Caribbean territories. Broadcasters first sounded the alarm about impending changes this summer, explaining the C-band is highly reliable and ensures the programming, along with national news and emergency information, reaches Americans. Engineers expect the FCC's moves will require broadcasters to use other satellite bands and replace antennas, waveguides, and receivers. It isn't clear whether the government would use any of the auction results to reimburse stations. The FCC is acting under a rare deadline imposed by Congress. The budget bill passed by Congress in July requires the FCC to clear existing users and auction at least 100 MHz in the upper C-band by July 2027 and at least 300 MHz total by 2034. To meet the 2027 deadline, the FCC is proposing to use the framework from the first C-band proceeding in 2020 when the FCC auctioned 280 MHz in the lower portion of the C-band, which is 3.7 through 3.98 GHz, for flexible wireless use. That move required new satellite equipment for many broadcasters. For broadcasters, the concern is that relocating existing Earth station operations a second time will be dramatically more expensive and lengthier than the first transition.
The 2026 Southeast VHF Society Conference will be held on April 16th through the 19th in Macon, Georgia. All interested in VHF and above amateur operations are invited to attend. The conference will begin on a Thursday night social at the local establishment. The technical conference begins Friday morning and will include a luncheon with a guest speaker and continued technical presentations in the afternoon. The conference events continue with an evening flea market and hospitality suite. Saturday morning, the technical presentations continue and conclude early afternoon when the antenna range and rover display opens. The conference ends with an in-house banquet, including a guest speaker, awards, and door prize giveaway. Please visit www.svhfs.org for further details, which will include hotel and conference registration details and a call for papers.
Schools and other educational institutions who have enjoyed student contacts with astronauts on board the International Space Station already know the value of this respected program. It places an emphasis on science and radio education and gives a window into how ham radio works as a powerful educational tool. Now everyone can experience communication, at least one-way communication, with a NASA astronaut in a new video released by NASA, the U.S. Space Agency. In a little less than 4 minutes, the NASA video features astronaut Nicole Ayers and KJ5GWI explaining to viewers how school contacts are made with the help of ham radio operators around the world. Addressing students directly, she says that the contacts are meaningful but necessarily brief because the ISS is moving around the Earth at a speed of 17,500 miles an hour. The video was recorded appropriately during Expedition 73, which launched in the spring of this year. The video is available on YouTube.
A $25,000 grant from the Northern California DX Foundation is being provided to the team heading to Sable Island in March for the CY0S activation. According to the team's website, the dates have been set for March 19th through the 31st. The team leaders are Murray, WA4DAN, and Glenn, W0GJ, who will operate alongside veteran D-expeditioners Pat, N2IEN, Lee, WW2DX, Ralph, K0IR, Jay, K4ZLE, Mike, K9NW, and Scott, NE9U. In a comment on the DXNews.com website, Murray acknowledged the Northern California DX Foundation's ongoing support for various DXpeditions like this one, support that spans a period of more than 33 years. Sable Island weather is expected to be a challenge at the time the team's airplane arrives. It is usually a cold and snowy time, sometimes with gale force winds. The island is about 300 kilometers or 186 miles east of Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Although he made his living in the world of high tech as a solid-state physicist, Bob Whalen, Golf 3, Papa Juliet Tango, was, in so many ways, a full-time radio amateur. He received his license in 1961, focusing on CW operating on HF and LF. As his enthusiasm grew for contesting, he made a name for himself as a supporter of the Commonwealth Contest, a CW contest for operators in British Commonwealth countries, such as Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and, of course, the UK. He also built an online presence for its widely scattered participants, eventually writing a book about the contest's evolution. Bob had also been actively involved in the International Amateur Radio Union and the First Class Operators Club, with a growing involvement in the Radio Society of Great Britain over the years. His participation grew from being a volunteer on the Society's HF committee to becoming president, serving from 2002 to 2003, and again from 2013 to 2014. Bob became a silent key on December 4th.
The crew of Soyuz MS-27, including NASA astronaut Johnny Kim, KJ-5HKP, along with Russian cosmonaut Sergei Ryzhkov and Alexei Zubritsky, returned safely to Earth after living aboard the International Space Station in weightlessness for 245 days. The return marked the end of ISS Expedition 73. As part of his astronaut training, Kim earned his technician class amateur radio license in July of 2024. Kim launched to the International Space Station on April 8, 2025, as a flight engineer on the Soyuz MS-27 spacecraft. He spent 8 months aboard the station as an Expedition 72 and 73 flight engineer, conducting science experiments and maintaining the space station. During the science expedition, Kim orbited the Earth 3,920 times and traveling nearly 104 million miles. He saw the arrival of 9 visiting spacecraft and the departure of 6 during his time in orbit. This was Kim's first spaceflight where he served as flight engineer. This also was Zubritsky's first trip to the space station. Ryzhkov now has logged a total of 603 days in space during 3 trips to the orbital complex, ranking him 13th of all time. The 3 crew members were flown by helicopter to Karaganda, Kazakhstan, where recovery teams are based. After medical exams, Kim boarded a NASA aircraft and returned to Houston to spend Christmas with his wife and their 3 children. Expedition 74 is now underway with veteran NASA astronaut Mike Fink, KE-5AIT, as commander, leading 6 flight engineers, including NASA astronaut Zena Cardman, KJ-5CMN, and Chris Williams, KJ-5GEW. JAXA, the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Kamaya Yu, KG-5BPH, and Roscosmos cosmonauts Oleg Plentonov, Sergei Kudservgov, and Sergei Mikhev.
Hams in Vermont, who have been members of the recently dismantled Radio Amateur Civil Emergency Service, or RACES, have begun joining the team at the Medical Reserve Corps of the state's Department of Health. According to Kate Hammond, KC1DUY, the manager of the Medical Reserve Corps Communications Section, Vermont's shift in deployment of radio volunteers is part of a changeover going on in many states. She said in an email that emergency communications is emerging as a Medical Reserve Corps mission in more states, but the creation of the mission set in Vermont is a work that's specific to them. She said that towards the end, John Colt, NV1Y, the hospital net coordinator for the Medical Reserve Corps, and Heather Rigney, KC1PMR, the Corps statewide coordinator, are overseeing the creation of documents for the newly configured team. Former RACES materials are being used to help guide future practices of Medical Reserve Corps operators, who will attend orientation meetings soon. The Vermont Healthcare Net has also become more active. Kate said that members will be affiliated with one of 8 local Medical Reserve Corps units for any drill or event, which could be deployed as well to shelters when a communications outage occurs. Although Josh Cohen, KB1NIJ, a long-term RACES member and an experienced net control operator, said he's sorry to see the RACES program go, but he's preparing to join the Medical Reserve Corps team. Josh is among many hams eager to continue using their skills.
And our final story this week. If you haven't already worked any of the stations for the special 12 Days of Christmas event, you still have time. This year's lineup of swans a-swimming, geese a-laying, and calling birds have been joined by a new bonus station based in Puerto Rico with the call sign WP3S/DOC. QSOs are being made on the HF bands using CW and SSB through to Christmas Day, December 25th. Everyone who works at least one station will be entitled to a downloadable certificate. Work all 12 days stations, and you'll get a clean sweep. If your log includes the station in Puerto Rico, that will earn you a clean sweep plus. Certificates will be made available after January 31st. See the QRZ.com page for K2RYD for more details. Remember, operators are not accepting or sending QSL cards, but they are sending their very best for the holiday season.
This Week in Amateur Radio is holding open auditions for news anchors for the weekly national worldwide amateur radio news service. If you have a good radio voice and can reliably read provided news copy, we are looking for you. This, of course, is an all-volunteer position. An amateur radio license is not required. You must have a high-quality microphone, headset mics are not used, and be familiar with audio editing software to record and edit your finished news stories before uploading. If you would like to try out for a weekly or bi-weekly anchor position with North America's premier amateur radio news on air and podcast, please send an email to our producer, George, W2XBS. You can include a sample MP3 of yourself reading news copy sent as an attachment to W2XBS77@gmail.com. That's whiskey, the number 2, X-ray Bravo Sierra 77 @gmail.com. Be sure and use Anchor Audition in the subject line. Please include your phone number and a good window of time for a callback to discuss your submission and our operating logistics to see if This Week in Amateur Radio is a good fit for you. We hope to hear from you soon.
This Week in Amateur Radio is heard all around the world on the amateur bands, and on great repeater systems like the KB3 CNN Gateway FM Association repeater, on 146.730 MHz every Tuesday evening at 7:30 p.m., covering the wide area of western Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia. If your repeater system carries This Week in Amateur Radio, let us know via email, and we will mention your station in an upcoming edition. Send your information to W2XBS77@gmail.com.
Many of the news and information items heard in this edition of This Week in Amateur Radio have been provided by the American Radio Relay League, the ARRL Audio News Service, and the ARRL Letter, AMSAT, the Radio Amateurs of Canada, the Shortwave Listening Post, the Federal Communications Commission, the Radio Society of Great Britain, and Ofcom, the South African Radio League, the International Amateur Radio Union, the Wireless Institute of Australia and the Australian Communications and Media Authority, the New Zealand Association of Radio Transmitters, the Amateur Radio Newsline, the Rain Hamcast, Eric Guth, 4Z1UG and QSO Today, QRZ.com, the International Telecommunications Union, the 425DX News, Parks on the Air, and the Soda Reflector, and various news sources on the Internet.
With special thanks to all our weekly news sources and to you, our listeners, that wraps up this edition of This Week in Amateur Radio. If you'd like to write to us, you can find everything you need, including archive editions of the news service, at our website at twiar.net. And now, for all of us at This Week in Amateur Radio headquarters and our news team around the world, this is Chris Perrine, KB2FAF, wishing you a 73.